I want to pick up on the idea of balancing the budget in 10 years, because some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have committed to that. Speaker McCarthy has made that as a goal. But at the same time, they've also made as a goal no tax increases and no changes to Social Security, Medicare, defense. I referenced this in my opening statement to Dr. Zandi. Given the analytics that Moody's did on this kind of a proposal a couple weeks ago, can you talk about what level of cuts would have to go to everything else government does if you were to attempt to pursue a policy like that?
And I think the CBO actually released a memo very recently documenting the severity of the cuts that would be necessary to achieve a balanced budget 10 years from now under the restrictions that you articulated. And, you know, pretty clearly it's not realistic. It would require a complete cut of all discretionary non-defense spending to achieve that. And that probably understates things in the sense that it's a static score, meaning it doesn't account for the impact of those changes on the economy and what that would mean for revenue, what that would mean for the automatic stabilizers and spending. So it's probably not even possible to achieve that over a 10-year period. And moreover, given the current state of the economy, the high inflation, the high interest rates, the vulnerabilities to the economy, significant cutting at this point in time, you know, if it were any time in the near future, I think would be the fodder for a recession. And you articulated kind of the fallout in terms of jobs and unemployment, and it would be quite significant. So I don't think that proposal is at all feasible or realistic.
Thank you. And Moody's projected 2.5 million job losses as well as a recession in 2024 if that sort of policy were to come about. Let me pick up on the debt ceiling. Can you begin to describe what the consequences would be if for the first time in American history we breached the debt ceiling?
There's short, immediate consequences and longer-term consequences. The immediate consequence, I think under any scenario would be, we would go into recession, it would be severe, financial markets would be upended, we would have turmoil in markets. As I mentioned earlier, particularly in the context of the current fragility in the banking system, financial system more broadly that exists already today. So my sense is that if you want to kind of make it more concrete, if you remember back to TARP, that was the bailout package that was passed during the financial crisis, $700 billion package for banks, vehicle industry, and housing. Congress voted that down initially, and when that happened, markets tanked. You know, equity prices fell, credit spreads gapped out, and of course, it was so harrowing to watch. I can remember just watching the TV at that time. It was very harrowing. Congress immediately reversed course and passed TARP. That's the same kind of dynamic in the near term that would, I think, happen here.
What would be the effect on the status of the dollar as the world's reserve currency?
It'd be significantly diminished. How could it not be? I mean, the reason why the rest of the world wants to put their savings into dollars as a reserve currency is because they feel it's money good. That if they, if they hold dollars, they're going to, hold bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds, that they're going to get their money back on time with no delay, as is in their agreement with the U.S. Treasury. If we break that, then interest rates will be higher for forever, and the interest expense to us would be higher, and our fiscal problems more significant, and governments would not want to hold the dollar to the same degree as a reserve currency. They'll look for other ways of other currencies to hold their reserves in.
And let me, my time is about to expire, so can you reference this a little bit in your testimony? There's a bill that was passed out of committee recently, so-called debt prioritization. How would the rest of the world and the markets interpret this? Would they interpret it as legitimate? Or would they, in fact, interpret it as basically default by another name?
They view it as, it's the U.S. Treasury bond I invested in is not money good. I'm not going to get my money on time as is agreed to. They would stop buying bonds, which would already send interest rates up because foreign investors are big purchasers of bonds, and then ultimately start selling bonds, depending on how things kind of unfold. But they would not remain as investors in U.S. Treasury, certainly not to the degree that they are right now.
Thank you. I yield back.